Hey, Mind, Body, Spirit Summit community. I'm Courtney Riley. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Mind, Body, Spirit Virtual Summit. And today I have Lela Beam with me. Lela is the co-founder of the Amala School of Prenatal Yoga, which she co-founded in 2014 with Cassie Rogers. She also is the co-founder of Grateful Yoga of Evanston, which she co-founded in 2010 with her husband, Nick Beam. Shout out to Cassie and Nick Beam. They're amazing. She is a certified Kripalu yoga teacher, a Parya yoga teacher, and also a Phoenix Rising yoga therapist, as well as one of the few yoga therapists certified by the International Association of Yoga Therapy. Lela has been teaching Hatha yoga group classes and private prenatal yoga full-time since 2005. Yoga provided monumental support for Lela during both of her pregnancies and her recovery process. Lela is super inspired to share all of her knowledge and experience with yoga teachers. Lela and I go way back. I mean, way back. So Lela, I could actually cry. Lela, you just inspire me so much and have always inspired me with your graceful, intuitive, wise, and intentional style of teaching. You're just so present, and the way that you hold space and the way you educate your teachers, but your students, your teachers, the teacher trainees, but also your loved ones. You're just one of those people that you live it. You don't just, teach it and have it coming from here and here. It exudes out of you, and you walk it. So it's just such an honor always to be in your presence, because anytime I'm with you, I learn more. And so I'm just so excited to have this community get to hear you and know you even just for a few moments. So I know that prior to, and especially since the birth of Jasper, her first child, her son Jasper, who's now 5, and totally awesome little ninja warrior dude. She became deeply committed. You became deeply committed to sharing the tools to creating community for women who are in all the different stages of life, right? So, from desiring to get pregnant to being pregnant, postpartum, menopause, adolescence, menstrual cycle, but especially women in those childbearing years became super just powerful for you. Like, you couldn't get enough of that, and sharing that and creating community for it. So can you share a little bit about your journey as a yogi, your journey as a mom and a woman into this area of expertise, and why you feel it's so important?
Sure. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I didn't know we were going to both start off crying.
I know, right? I didn't either. So it's not a plan.
I love you.
Yeah.
So I started practicing yoga in high school. And then got a little more serious about it in college when I found my first real teacher. For me, it was always a way to relieve stress and anxiety, and back pain. And I started off with a teacher actually who was a Kripalu certified teacher. He did kind of a slower moving vinyasa, but very mindful, and he was really interested in the psychology of yoga. This is out in Providence, Rhode Island, back in the early 2000s. Around when I met Nick, and we started practicing there. And I felt so fortunate that he was my first teacher, because I was really inspired to, from the get-go, investigate the psychology of yoga and what it can do for us, not only just on a physical level, but mentally as well. Because I could really relate to that, being in school and just trying to stay focused and trying to stay healthy and trying to stay sane and connected to myself. So I was really able to right away kind of find the yoga off the mat kind of feeling, with this teacher that I had. So then I went to India and Thailand for about a year, and came back. My husband and I came back, and we decided that we wanted to make a really intentional career choice. And so we went to Kripalu and got certified there through their month-long 200-hour program in 2005, and came back and pretty much just started teaching right away. And it was really an interesting thing, because Kripalu is a very gentle, it's gentle in some ways, but it's also, I would say it's very well paced. I mean, you can get to a degree of intensity, but it's like more even on the energetic level of intensity or mental focus. It's very meditation oriented, and very mindful movement, not so much alignment based, not so much hot or fast yoga. And so that was really powerful for me in my own body to start to kind of slow down and become more connected. But also for the people that I was teaching, I was teaching kind of in a community where there's a lot more like Ashtanga and Vinyasa teachers. And I was teaching at the studio that was primarily Ashtanga. And the owner of the studio was like, you're a little slow for this studio. And I was like, I know, I've noticed, like, I use props, and, Kripalu is a really therapeutic style of yoga. They do teach us how to use props. They taught us how to use restorative yoga. They taught us how to use, just basic techniques for embodiment. It wasn't so much about the sequence or the playlist or anything like that. So I was kind of a sore thumb. But I was also excited when this woman offered to mentor me to teach prenatal yoga. Yeah. And so I was like, prenatal yoga? I'm just 25 and I don't even know if I want kids, and that seems weird. And she was like, no, trust me, you're perfect because you're the only one here that's going slowly. It's great. And you use blocks and you use bolsters. And so I started, and I was intimidated initially, for sure, and I really didn't know that much. I mentored with this woman. I went to a bunch of different classes. There weren't really trainings back then to become certified in prenatal yoga. This is like a newer thing, which I'm actually really excited that there are standards now for prenatal yoga teachers. But back then there weren't. So I just sort of started off teaching these group classes and just asking the women what they needed and giving them the space and support that they were asking for. And what I could really see kind of right off the bat was that the main craving was for community, and connection with each other and to be listened to. And I was really excited because for me, that teaching the prenatal students was sort of the most gratifying experience I'd had teaching in my early teaching career, because the women were already so interested in what was going on. I mean, you think about, as a yoga teacher, you're always trying to get people to like pay attention to what's happening inside. Right. When somebody's pregnant, they're like, what's happening inside?
Right. And give me some tools to understand this and deal with this and be okay with these body changes. And I've never experienced this before. What can I do to actually stay fit? What's safe? What's okay? Yeah,
exactly. So they're very curious and they're wanting education and they really desire to be there. The attendance feels very purposeful. And so that's an exciting energy to have in a class. And so I got really interested in it, and I started to see that giving women tools to prepare for birth, giving women tools to prepare for postpartum and for early parenthood and the transformation into motherhood is kind of the foundation for, I don't want to sound too lofty, but I sometimes think about like world peace, like yoga at the beginning, like how are you going to respond to this primary relationship? How will you, receive this information? What is it that at the heart, the core of the way you embrace or don't embrace motherhood, and how does that affect your child and your relationship going forward, and then your child as they grow older? So it's like to hit it right at the inception feels really potent to me and really exciting. So even when I hadn't personally gone through my own pregnancies and birth experiences and postpartum experiences, I was enamored. I was excited. Yeah. So then I went on and got a yoga therapy certification with Phoenix Rising in 2008. And then shortly after that became Para Yoga certified. So got a little bit more background on therapeutic angles, both from somatic therapy. Phoenix Rising is really a one-on-one kind of modality that taught me how to hold space for my students and not try to fix or solve for them. and then Para Yoga giving me a little bit
Talk
more.
about getting ready to have a child.
Exactly.
Like holding space and not
Just
having to
space.
fix or, yeah, I mean,
Just holding them while they cry and like being okay with them crying.
yeah,
Not trying to make them stop crying.
oh,
That was actually a really interesting. I remember with Jasper, my first, we would just like let him cry, like hold him and let him cry, and not try to make it stop. And I remember his mom was like, "Why are you? Well, I can't stand the baby crying." We're like, I'm like, I don't know. It's okay. It's
yeah,
okay. He doesn't have to be happy all the time, you know?
right.
And that's really the essence of Phoenix Rising, is like welcoming people to have the whole range of feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and to not try to shut down. And I think especially for boys, there's the,
Mm-hmm.
come on, you're going to be okay. Like shake it
Or
off
for
or
women,
whatever.
it's be the good little girl, like put the
That's
smile
right.
on. So
Yeah.
to have at least at home be a space where you can show all the different emotions and be held for it. Not to say that you're not held responsible for your actions from that, but that you're allowed to have all those emotions and those feelings. That's pretty powerful. And so to be an intentional parent like that, it does come from your own practice.
Yeah. I mean, nothing more powerful than just, taking some deep breaths. I always tell my students, I'm like, let's practice relaxing in a situation that is not at all relaxing.
Right? Oh yeah.
I mean, childbirth, well, late pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, parenthood in general. I mean, what situations are you in? How many times in a week where you're like, somebody's screaming, somebody's sick, you're in pain, like all
Yeah.
of these things. And then you have to figure out, like, how do I not get into a freak out here?
Yeah. Yeah, and if I am noticing that I'm freaking out, how do I keep that something that I'm noticing versus expressing in a way that I later regret?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So the Phoenix Rising taught you how to hold space. What did the Para Yoga bring in?
Para Yoga has a really deep connection to traditional wisdom in the yoga sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Connects to Ayurveda, in terms of lifestyle choices, but also in terms of understanding the perinatal life stage from the perspective of Ayurveda is actually really interesting, and thinking about sort of the ways that things can become imbalanced in a pregnant woman.
Yeah.
So it's a time of excess, right? It's like a time of building.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that can sometimes result in things like, excess inflammation or phlegm or, digestive problems. So some of the, Ayurveda is a really useful lens to help people understand their symptoms, and then thinking about some of the therapeutic application that we can give in terms of breathing, relaxation, and posture practices to help calm some of the tendencies that get exacerbated during pregnancy. So I've really gotten a lot out of that. And then from, the side of working with relaxation practices and working with the mind, I mean, that's all comes from Tantra and from Yoga Sutras of, Samkhya philosophy. We're getting like Para Yoga gets all the rivers of the yoga tradition together, I think. And so it's a tremendous toolkit for any person.
Well, it's really about you have all these different methodologies that you have been trained in, Kripalu to Phoenix Rising to Para Yoga, and they end up like wonderfully congealing inside of this awesome experiment of life called Lela Beam, right? And then you get to be with women, and being a woman, especially now having children, it gets to be expressed in this way and kind of reconfigured, especially because so much of yoga has been brought down through a male lens. It's interesting for you to then be so engrossed in your practice and so dedicated and devoted that then to go, but I see that it can work this way, right? Because, I mean, you and I were talking about how we used to, as women, traditionally, have these places to go. We had, during different cycles, we had a red tent that we'd go to, right? And we have a most people in the same community, same tribe would even get their menstrual cycles at the same time. And maybe sometimes even according to the moon. And then they'd all end up in this red tent where there's 6 women giving birth and 17 grandmothers who are helping. And we just don't have that. We haven't, I'll say, have not necessarily had that. And especially, if anything, as women, without having those communities, or even maybe moms or parents who had the language to talk to us, you're thrown a tampon in the bathroom and you have to figure it out almost, or in versus it being celebrated and honored. And I really, love that you are creating spaces for women to celebrate, right? Honor and respect.
I really come to see these cycles that we have as women as empowerments. These are our powers. Yeah. Having a menstrual cycle, that's your power. I mean, how did you have a baby?
Yeah,
where did you get that baby? The tide of Aunt Flo brought you the baby.
Right.
Like that's the tide that brings you and it brings us a sensitivity and a connection to nature. It's the so one of my teachers, this woman named Uma Dinsmore Tooley, she talks about the moon inside, right? And so every woman has a moon inside, and it tells us this: we're the changing tides. We are the ones that hold that nature wisdom inside of us, and it's a blessing, not a curse.
Yeah, where so many of my friends, I think, growing up would talk about, oh, I have my period, and what a drag. Right? I'm on the rag.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? Versus...
I did my period when I was younger.
Right? Where,
what are you doing? What are you going to show me about my health this month?
Exactly, right? I mean, I have to say, really, when you can befriend it, it ends up being... There's so much information. I even ended up... I lost mine for a little while through overtraining and training and different things. And then when it came back, I was like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you for blessing me again with your presence, because it was really a way for me to tell where my health was. And then I felt bad at times that my male partners didn't have one because they couldn't have that kind of personal check-in. They have their own ways of checking in. They're different hormonal cycles, but ours are just a little bit more clear, I would say.
Yeah, and our cycles affect them, so
yeah, that's
we bring the moon to the household.
yeah, exactly. So I would say too, I just think that you are super dedicated to creating a space too, like that through Amala. Actually, will you talk about the creation and the gestation period and the birthing of Amala?
Yeah. So my friend Cassie, when she was pregnant, she came and she was in her 200-hour teacher training, and she came in and I mentored her a little bit because she wanted to specialize in prenatal yoga. So that was a long time ago, like maybe 10 years ago, something like that. Even though I really, there were so few prenatal teachers. I was really one of the only ones on the North Shore.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So we started to know each other, and then she got invited to teach some sort of short prenatal yoga weekends at a studio in the city. And she invited me to come help her with it because, I think she sent me the curriculum, and she was like, what do you think about this? What would you add? And I was like, the psychology, like you're missing the part about people's minds. Because she had all the, you can have all the physical stuff. And I was like, I can help you with that. I'm really into that. I really am into the application of yoga philosophy here. Let's just really give it to these women and teach the teachers how to make prenatal classes meaningful instead of just, pregnancy safe.
Right.
And
like,
so,
don't do that pose, do this pose.
Right. And it's like, well, great. That's something, but it's not enough. It's a missed opportunity. Because people really are, they're soaking up information, and a lot of them are not getting great information, if any. And they, to offer resources is one of the great gifts that a prenatal yoga teacher can give.
Yeah.
Anyway, so So she and I did that first collaboration. It was just about 6 months after I had my son, and I was really fired up because I had a a very uncomfortable pregnancy, a very, very long labor, and a hard recovery. And I was really bowled over. I was like, this is way more than I had anticipated. I mean, if you think about, like, I was already really interested in supporting women.
Yeah.
And then I had a baby, and then I was like, oh.
Like, oh.
This level?
Yeah.
Level?
Right.
Like, what happened? I mean, everything I thought I knew about asana was gone. Everything I thought I knew about myself had turned upside down. Right. You know, I'd accomplished a feat that I never thought was possible.
Right.
So I really awakened to my power in a lot of ways. And I felt that I didn't really fit into some of the paradigms of yoga that I had in the past. And I felt like my practice needed to change. And I felt that I didn't want to be hard on myself about that. I wanted to be excited about it and welcoming of it and be like, you know, maybe I need to find some female teachers, and maybe I need to, you know, create programs to empower women to feel more embracing of this life stage instead of rejecting of it. So I got really excited, and she was the perfect partner for me, and we got to know each other. It's like we started creating our curriculum for our 85-hour prenatal training right when Yoga Alliance was starting to have the certification, which I was really excited to see that they were actually taking it seriously enough.
Yeah.
To say, actually, this is a curriculum. People need to spend at least, you know, around 100 hours learning about this. It's not just like a cursory 10-hour thing.
Right.
And so we were excited to be invited to debut our curriculum at a big studio in the city of Chicago. And right out of the gates, I mean, I don't know how, again, like my son wasn't even a year old. I think we started our program. I think
right. So you're birthing your son, and then you're birthing this program at the same time.
But honestly, the Shakti was so strong. It was like just, I was so excited. I was like, just bring it.
You were so initiated. You know, you were talking about celebrating certain moments in life and it was just such an initiation. That's so cool.
That's really the essence, you know, of Kundalini awakening, right? Is when you feel the power, the charge. I mean, even Courtney, look at what you're doing right now. Like, you're creating something powerful right now with your friends and doing these interviews, and you just had a baby too, you know. But if you ride that wave, and you really feel into like your magnificence, your capacity is so much greater than you ever could imagine. I mean, look at all the things that you're able to do on like such little sleep, and you know, I mean, we are phenomenal. And men are phenomenal also, but women really need to hear this. Like, we are phenomenal. We also need to be cared for and to rest, but we need to give ourselves some credit for all that we can do. And so for me, it just felt like this natural extension of all this energy I had that was just awakened in me after having a baby. And so, pretty much right out of the gate, like, we were successful. We just had this program. It was like the first year, I think it was in 2014, you know, we had like 15 students, and right now it's our 5th year. And we've always had, you know, between 15 and 20 women coming to take the training. We have doulas, midwives, OB-GYNs, physical therapists, chiropractors, all kinds of professionals take our training, yoga teachers, of course, massage therapists, people who want to learn how to support women through yoga in their childbearing years. And so we have, you know, a lot of professionals that teach with us. We have a holistic fertility specialist, Beth Heller from Pulling Down the Moon. She does a day with us. We have a pelvic floor physical therapist that does a couple of days in the prenatal and in the postpartum modules.
Cool.
We have a certified nurse midwife and a doula group that comes in our childbirth preparation module. And then we have a social worker come and talk about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders in our postpartum module. So we cover the whole childbearing year or years. I really think it's, you know, it takes us more than a year from beginning to end. But it's a really comprehensive program. I'm really proud of it. And we really train our teachers to be educators.
So beautiful. Truly, because that's what, you know, at the deepest state of it too, so much of our teachers were men, and it came through a male lens, and so to now be, at least mine, and
Mine too.
yeah, and so to be then, initiated into this understanding of, oh my gosh, my whole identity has shifted the moment I wanted to even become a mom. Like this idea dripped into my body, and it was, or I could cry again. It took me over, right? And anything I was doing was, how can I prepare my body to be this vessel, right? And I wanted to be intentional, and then I had a miscarriage, which was really powerful and crazy. And then it wasn't until I had one that suddenly all these women were going, well, I had one, and I had one, and I had one, and I go, well, where are these conversations? Where is this space? Yeah. And then I got pregnant again, but then there's these fears. Am I going to lose this one? And what's going on? And who can I talk to about this? And where can I go? And I love that you're so committed to creating a community and a space. Lela also teaches a beautiful class for women who are pregnant, and then also a mommy and baby class. And you've started to do them back to back so that there can be this, crossover community time, so that the women who have just had the babies can be talking to the women who are going to be having a baby soon, and vice versa. And I just think it's really this beautiful space to acknowledge the ride of a woman, like the life cycles is what we were talking about, and how there's these different phases. And how would you say that creating this kind of community has shifted the way that you view yoga going, like the direction of yoga?
Yeah, I would say it's such an important thing to think about, the future of yoga, or why are we doing yoga in the first place? Is it just to, look good or feel better? I don't know that really sustains us the same way that the feeling of community would. And I think we live in times where people feel very isolated and scared, especially around these new questions about parenthood and birth. And we don't have a lot of great models or ideas or images about birth. Mostly it's like these horrible movies of somebody, goes into labor in the aisles of Target and then gives birth to an alien while she's screaming. We don't have a lot of good ideas about what, healthy childbirth looks like, and then postpartum time, that's even more it needs demystifying. So I think that it's really important for women to feel that they can both have a mentor and to be a mentor and to be a mentee in a way, right? So I would love to see, and it's part of what I provide, or when women come to the studio who've already had babies with the first time moms, and you give it a chance. One of the things I felt after I had a baby, I was like, wow, my birth story and some of the things that I've learned is actually going to be relevant to somebody else. Yeah. I get to share, and that's part of sharing, is actually part of my healing, is to talk about what I've gone through. And then for a woman to be in the presence of other women who've gone before her, it gives her confidence to say, wow, you know what, there's 300,000 other women that give birth every day. So I can do this, or this woman did this, or, I think I would really like to see more of these kinds of communities happening. And I mean, it's part of what's great about teaching a therapeutic population, right? Everybody's in the same boat, more or less.
Yeah.
That's really what the vision of our studio is, more and more becoming like a yoga therapy studio, where we have cohorts of people that are taking yoga classes that are in the same stage of life, or struggling with the same things. We built a really great community around yoga for osteoporosis, or things like that. So we have visions for more of those kinds of things, because I think that's really what people crave most of all, is like-mindedness and sharing in their struggle and being able to find resources. And what I always tell my teacher trainees, I'm like, you don't really have to worry about your attendance in your classes, if you're offering people something that's really valuable where they say, I'm going to come every time I come to class, I'm going to learn something that prepares me for childbirth or prepares me for parenthood, then you don't have to even worry. Because it's not about, should I get off the couch and exercise or not?
Right.
Because, you pretty much always lose.
It's a deeper value. Yeah, it's deeper value. And today I would say, like, our biggest resources is, like, in our communities, Google.
Yeah.
And versus making the phone call or showing up at a studio space where there's a community of women who can actually tell me about their exact experience. And, and let me know that it's okay that you're grieving your old life even while you're celebrating this new life coming in, because there's so many things, I think, wrapped around that identity change of those different phases, going from being a little girl to getting your period and moving into being to womanhood, to then deciding that I'm ready to have a child, to then at some point losing your cycle, like having to be something that then there might be grief around that. You might be surprised that you're excited by that. Who knows all the different emotions that will happen around that. And I know that I've talked to many different women who've gone through that, and there's a lot of different stuff that occurs. And I think that another thing that I love that you guys offer is this very clear guidance to use these different stages as moments of celebration and acknowledgement, right? That it's versus just letting it pass over and letting it be something that you have shame or guilt around. Actually holding that time is sacred.
Yeah, it's an initiation time.
Yeah.
Like your first period, miscarriage, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, postmenopause. Like these are we have a tremendous opportunity for understanding ourselves and our relationship to the rest of the world. And if you really think about, what is yoga about? You could say a lot of things what yoga is about, but I think a lot of what it is for me is coming into connection with the way that I am made of nature, right? Like I am made of the universe. We're all made of star stuff, right? So understanding like what is it that is inherent in me, or what is the wisdom that lives within my body, and how does slowing down and becoming connected to myself, how is that going to serve towards my spiritual awakening? So the first principle of yoga therapy is meet the client where they're at. It's the same for when we're doing therapy on ourselves. Like meet yourself where you're at. How are you feeling today? Well, I'm on day 2 of my cycle and I'm feeling, pretty internalized right now.
Yeah.
So it's
letting it be something that feeds you.
It doesn't fit into the masculine paradigm.
Right? It ends up being a relationship versus this thing to suppress. I mean, I was telling you earlier that when I was training and I was trying to keep up with my cohorts, who I was biking with and running with, and we'd pick a race day, I used to not think twice about it being, I wouldn't even know, am I going to get my period or not get my period? And then, gosh, I'd get my period sometimes right before a race, and I'd have no energy, right? And I'd be going, wait, why didn't I, create a companionship and a relationship with my own self around when the best times are for me to be externalized and when the best times for me to be internalized, and to honor that versus looking at it as something like, oh, great, now I'm not going to be able to keep up, right? Yeah, so, and there are other times in my cycle where I have 10 times more energy than anybody else, and so to harness that, right? So
yes, absolutely. There's a really cool book that I recently read. It's one of my teacher's books. It's called Wild Power, and it's by a woman named Alexandra Pope, and it's all about menstrual cycle awareness. And she has this term she calls the inner seasons. And so thinking about the post menstrual time, sort of the first week and that week and a half after you're finished menstruating, is like your inner spring. And then as you get to ovulation, you have the most energy. That's your high summer.
Right.
It's your peak of your energy. And the first 2 weeks of your cycle, you're in more of an upswing. You're more wanting to engage and create, and you have a lot more energy. And this is the more kind of masculine paradigm, right? This is the way we always want to be like that, more external. Mm-hmm. More, and then, like around your ovulation, like maybe you're feeling more sexual, you're feeling more extroverted, and everyone likes it like that, right? Right. Yeah, exactly.
More turned on.
Creative. And then you start to feel the fall, right? The fall comes. Fall is more internalizing. Maybe there's a sense of grieving, a sense of letting go, a sense of needing to turn towards the dark. And then menstruation is your inner winter. Wow. And it's this time of renewal, and it's the time of quiet, and it's this time of that if we are still, that we can have great insight. And I'm really interested in this because we don't take that time, and I've never taken that time. In just the past 6 months, I've been starting to be like, hey, maybe I should start to slow down a little bit the first couple days of my cycle, or premenstrually, if I pay attention to that energy and I don't overschedule, I don't get as grouchy.
Yeah.
And then, how winter is a really important season.
Yeah.
Even though it seems like there's nothing that's going on, everything's happening. It's all of the accumulation of that energy that then becomes spring again.
Right.
So if you write off winter and you just say, I want to get to spring, what do you have?
Right.
What do you have for spring?
You don't have the ojas for spring.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And do you want to tell everybody what ojas is?
Ojas is like your cup, your cup. It's your immunity, but it's also your gas tank. You could say you have a full cup or an empty cup. And you could ask anybody right now, and they took a deep breath, are you running on empty, or are you feeling half full? And they would know, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully, we would know.
If they were honest, if they were really clear and honest themselves.
Have you been sleeping? Have you been Have you been doing things that you enjoy? Are you feeling drained? Are you feeling inspired?
Yeah. How short is your wick?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people usually actually understand that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's just finding the language.
Yeah.
Well, so I know that you have these beautiful different offerings and trainings at Amala, and that you have a cool opportunity for the people listening today about a percentage off of your programs. Would you share a little bit about the different programs that you have coming up, and then let them know what the offer is?
Yeah, so we're recently expanding our vision for Amala. So we started as the Amala School of Prenatal Yoga, and now we're becoming the Amala School of Yoga, because we want to be inclusive of all stages of a woman's life, and do women's health related yoga workshops and trainings. So we're really especially interested in continuing education for yoga teachers and health professionals, because as you might be aware, I know you're aware, Courtney, there's just not a lot of that in 200-hour programs, and we need to kind of bolster people's education. So I'm really interested in creating more CE opportunities. So we're working with one of the women on our faculty is a women's health physical therapist. She's also a graduate of our program, and she specializes in pelvic health, and she's going to be doing a series of workshops this summer that are going to be three-hour long, in-depth workshops. So one in June, one in July, one in August. And the first one is on diastasis recti. So 100% of women actually have some amount of abdominal separation of their rectus abdominis. It's a functional adaptation of pregnancy. But people who are hypermobile, or people who do a lot of back bends, or people who've had multiple pregnancies and didn't take time to heal the separation, are at risk for a clinical.
Even some men have it too.
That's true. That's right. Yeah, if you're overweight, or you sit a lot, or you're hypermobile. So she's going to do a 3-hour in-depth workshop on how to treat diastasis recti.
Dude.
I know. So cool. And then, right? I know. Me too. And then another one on pelvic organ prolapse, which affects a huge amount of women. I think 70% of women, whether you had a vaginal birth or not. And even if you didn't even give birth, you can have pelvic organ prolapse. Cesarean births also can create pelvic floor dysfunction. It's really more of an effect of pregnancy. It can also be an effect of pushing stage of labor, but also just
and again,
genetic.
another thing that a lot of women don't want to talk about, and they don't think to talk about. And then once they do, another woman's like, well, I have that too, and I have that too, and by the way. And it's
Exactly.
like, what if we just had a training to go to, and then you end up meeting and understanding? So
and then you can actually really help your clients and help them identify and help them give them language to talk about it, so we can not be ashamed that that you have pain during intercourse. I read something like 40% of women have pain during intercourse and never do anything about it. And I'm like, oh, that's your pleasure. You don't really want to go talk to somebody about that?
Yeah.
So if anyone's watching, please go to a pelvic floor physical therapist and have an internal evaluation. If you're having pain or you're feeling something's just like not right in there, there's scar tissue can be a factor.
Yeah.
There's actually really easy ways to address it. I've had these things, so I can be a testimony.
Yeah.
And then the third workshop is about incontinence, and that's something that can affect everyone. It's just an effect of gravity or pelvic floor tone. So those are three in-depth things we're going to be.
Incontinence can be because it's too weak and it's also too tight.
Yes.
So it's like, it's understanding that, in both ways.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Oh, wow. So so awesome. Lela and Cassie have decided that people get 10% off if they sign up for all 3 of the women's health workshops this summer. So it's usually $200, so it's $20 off. And is that for everybody? Is that for just the certain amount of people that show up?
Anybody, yeah. And it's going to be held at a place called Ganesha Yoga on the north side of Chicago.
Yeah, so if you want to come visit Chicago in the summer, which is an amazing time, you can come to one of the workshops too. You don't have to sign up for all 3, right? You could just come in for one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and I just can't tell you how exceptional the teachers are that Lela surrounds herself with and brings in and attracts and trains. And I will be on one of those mats next to you if you show up. So you can check out more about that in the inner, about the opportunities and the trainings next to Lela's information in our Mind, Body, Spirit Virtual Summit scheduling information. You can also go check out amalaprenatalyoga.com as well, right? Is that correct? It's AMALA, prenatalyoga.com. So
yeah, and we have, we're starting to expand. So we also have a women's retreat that we're doing in the summer for women in any stage of life.
Talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
We're inviting one of my teachers from the UK is coming, Uma Dinsmore-Tooley. She's the author of a book called Yoni Shakti, and she is all about rediscovering the power of the divine feminine through yoga practices and making yoga practice more adaptive to the female body.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, like the Hatha yoga lineages are all from men, and she's dug deeper to find out where the women are in the story.
Yeah.
So that's really neat. And then and it's co-hosted by our friend Chanti Tacorante Perez, who's doing a labyrinth painting with us. So we're doing
that's
July.
That's June 27th?
Yeah.
June 27th to July 1st. So you guys will be listening to this in May. So come on to Chicago. Actually, where is it? That one's in.
It's about 4.5 hours north of Chicago. It's between Minneapolis and Madison.
Okay, awesome. So they can find out about that at the amalaprenatalyoga.com as well.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Lela, you are such a gift to my life, and I really know that anybody who's been attracted to listen to this today has received a lot and can continue to receive from you. So thank you so much. I feel so blessed.
Thank you, too. Thanks for the opportunity.